Hello everyone, today I want to give some general Abyss advice, particularly for floor 12 as someone who likes to push for 9 stars regularly. This video mainly lays out my thought process on how to decide on effective team compositions, but also a little trick that might help you squeeze out a bit of extra time. My inspiration for this was actually a Reddit thread asking people to share if they attempt floor 12 at all, and to my surprise, many seem to skip it entirely. There's nothing wrong with that if you don't enjoy this type of content but feel some sort of missing out on those 150 Primo Gems. To put that into perspective, to reach Hard Pity on a banner once, 90 wishes, just from your Abyss 12 earnings, you would need to clear every cycle for 4 years. Yeah, it's not exactly worth it for that. On the other hand, if you're looking for an endgame challenge, then Abyss is a great place, arguably the only place to be in Genshin. First of all, the most important thing, of course, having better builds means getting better results, but that's already everything that needs to be said about that. Now for actual advice, in my opinion, your success in Abyss 12 is highly dependent on your team composition. Some teams are so ridiculously strong that it can work to force them pretty much every cycle if all characters are on high quality builds. As a new player, aiming for the right national team for example can already get you pretty far. In general though, having a lot of options is preferable, so it's not exactly new player friendly content. In fact, during the Sumeru patches we experienced a little bit of a difficulty spike, I'd say. Now to get to the main question, how do I figure out which team to pick where? For this, I expect you to have at least a little bit of experience in terms of elemental reactions, different characters and what their strong suits are to save us some time here. Abyss cycles are designed in a way that heavily favor certain, let's call them team archetypes, to promote the current banner characters. In other words, characters who share the current banner characters' corresponding elements and game plans are heavily favored through buffs and enemy lineup. For example, right now we have Nahida and Nilo banners, so the elements in question are Dendro and Hydro, and as for the game plan, it's obviously Bloom. And I already alluded to it, but there are only two things changing every Abyss cycle. The first thing to look at is very straightforward, the Blessing of the Abyssal Moon. This example triggers some AoE true damage whenever your character takes damage on a fairly low internal cooldown. The obvious correlation is that you constantly will take damage from triggering Bloom and get, like I believe, around 3500 damage from this effect as a nice bonus. This and the Bloom reaction itself already indicate a very AoE damage heavy team composition. One thing though, I haven't tested it for this specifically, but usually the keywords damage taken and damage absorbed are conflicting in this game for some reason, so don't expect it to work with the shield characters. The other thing to look at is a little more complicated, the monster lineup. Initially you should identify if the teams need to be more heavy on single target damage or AoE damage for each half. For the first one we have a group here, then a boss in Chamber 2 and in Chamber 3 another boss, so obviously we are looking for single target damage. For the second half it is large groups for every chamber, so the exact opposite, we are looking for AoE damage. It's safe to assume that this is where the Bloom team is intended to be played. Again, the game plan is Bloom, so we are looking for Hydro and Dendro characters who preferably cover a wide area with their skills. That narrows it down enough for this particular second half. Now we still need to figure out the other team. For this it helps to look at what exactly we're fighting and see if there are any special mechanics involved that can be exploited by certain elements, reactions or weapon classes. And this applies basically to all of them, both bosses and these two guys in Chamber 1. If you don't exactly know what the bosses or the enemies do, just go to the tutorial section to monsters up here and it basically tells you exactly how to beat everything in the game. Just look them up, for example the crocodile in Chamber 1, it summons a block that needs to be destroyed by the corresponding element, in this guy's case obviously Hydro. Then the fanged beast, also in Chamber 1, is the exact same thing but for Dendro this time. Then the algorithm boss, it's basically weak to electro attacks, and the Ion Blight Drake, this guy basically flies around the whole time and you can never damage him, but if you have a bow character in your team you can aim for its weak spots and it will fall down and create a large opening for you to deal damage. So knowing all of this, you go back to the Spiral Abyss, look at the enemy lineup, and you can see that in Chamber 1 we will need Hydra for this guy, Dendro for this guy, in Chamber 3 we need Electra for this guy, and in Chamber 2 we need a bow character to deal with the Eon Blight Drake. In short, A Hyper Bloom team that features a bow character is probably what the devs were thinking of when designing this floor. To put this knowledge to good use, we ended up with a Hyper Bloom team with bow characters and good single target damage in the first half, and a Bloom team with a lot of AoE damage in the second half. Now just pick some utility characters to sustain your team and you're ready to go. And again, you don't need to stick to these exact teams, but I hope it's clear how to conceptualize it. Other characters, for example, would be Barbara, Kokomi, Dendro main character, Colei, Tenari, etc. And again, some of these characteristics are more important than others, so you can totally think a little bit out of the box, but this will usually require better build quality. For example, a bow character for the Aeon Blight Drake in the first half is absolutely essential, I think. Everything else can be solved with pure damage output by, let's say, a Ganyu Mel team, for example. So you can just get rid of all of this and just pick Ganyu Shenhe, Zhangling Bennett, for example, and it will work just fine. In fact, this is what I use to clear this. The last thing I want to mention is something that used to be a thing, especially the first few weeks of this game, because simply no one had great artifacts, and in general, getting to adventure rank 50 took way longer. But people still wanted to push deeper into Biz. What they did was just purposefully offset the crit and crit damage balance to have higher top end damage. With this, you just reset stages over and over again until you get lucky enough to meet the damage checks. It's a little gimmicky, but this might actually make a difference. Alright, that's it. My preference is to keep these type of videos as concise as possible, but I realize this is a very complex topic with a lot of things to say, so if you're an experienced player and have some nice tricks to add to this, something people absolutely need to know, then feel free to share down below. Anyway, hopefully it was still interesting. Stay tuned for more, have fun, and bye bye.